Hello and welcome to today's hypnosis lesson. Today we are going to be talking about signs of trance. So basically, how can you tell if a person is in hypnosis? So what do you look out for to tell you that they're going under? This is really valuable information because when you're hypnotising somebody, you really need to know whether or not you need to slow down your induction, maybe do a few more deepening techniques, or to speed it up a little bit and get on with the therapy. If they're already in a deep trance, you're just going to be wasting their time and your time if you don't get on with the next part of the actual session. So what do you look out for? Well, there's quite a few things that really indicate a person is relaxing, and it's those things you're looking for. The first one, which I think this is really important, and this is something you need to talk to your client about before you start the induction process. When people relax, the digestive system kicks in, so you'll very probably hear their stomach rumbling. Now, for whatever reason, people are a little bit embarrassed about that. So if you don't mention it beforehand and they're lying there relaxing, listening to your voice, and they suddenly notice they can hear their own stomach rumbling, they're going to be thinking to themselves, this is a bit embarrassing, I hope he can't hear my stomach. And that will not only distract them from what you're saying, but it'll also increase their stress levels and it will take them away from hypnosis. So it's always a good idea to tell your client that that's probably going to happen during the induction process. Now there's a real benefit to doing that as well. First, of course, it stops the embarrassment. You've told them it's very probably going to happen. When it happens, it means they're not embarrassed. But if, when you tell them, you say, when a person goes into hypnosis and their body becomes relaxed, the digestive system kicks in. So very often, you can begin to hear their stomach rumbling. So if your stomach rumbles, that's okay. You can just be completely relaxed about that because it means that you're going into a really nice deep state of trance. Now, if you say something like that, you've removed the embarrassment and you've created this kind of trigger that if their stomach does rumble, when it does, in their mind, they'll be thinking, he said this was going to happen, and he said that this means I'm going into a deep trance, therefore I am going into a deep trance. So it's a really nice way of deepening the trance state, just by having something that's very probably going to happen anyway, and connecting it to this means that you're going into hypnosis deeper. So I'd strongly recommend that you do mention that to someone before you start the induction on that little pre-talk. Another thing to look out for, and they won't notice this, but you most definitely will, their face will redden. This happens because as the muscles in the face relax, the tension is released, and the tiny capillary veins near the surface of the skin, they kind of open up, so blood can get closer to the surface of the skin. And usually you get a couple of red patches just here on the cheeks. So that's one to look out for. You'll also notice that people's face will tend to smooth out. And they can probably feel that as well. It'll almost feel to them as though they've got no wrinkles at all. And they'll usually look quite a bit healthier when they're going into hypnosis, and any tension or stress is taken away. So a lot of the lines that are normally on people's faces, they seem to smooth away. So people can look a little bit younger. At the same time, the face tends to hang a little. Really often, if they're very relaxed, the jaw will hang limp and loose. And also what quite often happens is the person's head will loll forward, kind of like that onto their chest or backwards onto, depending on what they're sitting on. What I use, which is just here, I'll just turn the camera a little and get this in. That's my hypnosis couch, which is, it reclines more than this, but this kind of area here, this pillow, the head's always rested on that, and it always kind of falls to the side when I'm doing hypnosis. So that's, as someone's relaxing like this, they go like that, and it's kind of that lull effect of their head. It really does indicate they've kind of just gone, it's almost like going over the edge of relaxation and down into something much deeper. Other things, but the whole body, when muscles relax and we just let go, the whole body just kind of just sort of veggies out, and areas do get bigger. So if the person's wearing a belt or tight shoes or anything like that, you should say before the actual session to loosen that to a place where it's going to be comfortable, or to remove it altogether. A tight belt, when people are in normal waking consciousness, people tend to hold themselves in a certain way, and that wouldn't be noticeable. But when you allow your body to relax quite profoundly, and your belly, especially if you're breathing deeply into your belly, a tight belt can be very, very distracting and uncomfortable. So it's really worth saying to someone before the induction to remove any tight belts or to loosen tight shoes, any of those kind of things. Also on the subject of muscles relaxing through the body, you'll often notice little involuntary twitches. Most notably when you're working through the body and you're talking about specific places. So you might say as your hands relax, you can imagine any tension just floating away and your fingers becoming all limp and loose. And if you're looking at their hand resting, you'll probably just notice a finger will pop up like that. And it's just tension being released, and it's quite common. And it's a really interesting thing to look out for. Now obviously, all this stuff, you need to be looking at the client. So you really, really want to get to a stage where you don't need an induction script. When I very first started, I was using induction scripts and I was reading them word for word, but then very, very quickly I got to a point where I'd have my clipboard and I'd just have a couple of things written on there. I'd just have like physical relaxation, staircase, and just little reminders of what I'm going to do next so that I wouldn't lose where I was on the actual session. I didn't use that for very long. It so quickly becomes something that is so natural and easy to do that you don't need any of that anymore, and you just pay complete attention to the client. Now, when you get to that point, you can see all this stuff happening, so you kind of know what pace to go, and also you can kind of feed things back to the person. We're going to be talking about this in another lesson. In fact, it's something I hadn't thought about before, so I'm just going to make myself a little note. But these are biofeedback loops where you kind of feed an experience back to a person and you use that to take them further into trance. So it's a little bit like pacing and leading. But you can only really do that if you're paying attention to what's going on. If you're reading the script and not even looking at your client, then you miss that opportunity. So the next thing that you need to look out for are rapid eye movements. Now, we've already talked about the different stages of hypnosis, the pre-talk, the physical body relaxation, and then the mental relaxation, the trance deepener. All of the the signs of trance that we've talked about so far, they tend to happen in the progressive relaxation section. The skin reddens, you get the twitchy movements, you get the stomach rumbling, that kind of thing. When we get onto the part where we go into the mental relaxation and we start to deepen the trance state, this is where you are more than likely going to see rapid eye movements. And these happen when a person becomes really involved in what you've told them to internally imagine, as opposed to being aware of their external circumstances. Now, as I've said on previous lessons, as a hypnotist, you're kind of narrowing someone's attentions down, and you're eliminating the outside world by relaxing the body and then relaxing the mind, and then you're kind of engaging the mind in something internal, and you're trying to get all of their senses involved in that. And the more real you can make that, the more powerful your induction is going to be. So that's kind of the objective here. So when you're doing this and you see the rapid eye movements, it sort of indicates that they're doing that. They are really engaging in that internal situation. When a person's eyes move rapidly, obviously they're closed. But you will be able to see the eyeballs underneath the sockets. It kind of looks like this, if the camera can pick this up. So you'll see that happening. And when you start to study NLP, and I'm going to be talking about this a lot later in the course, there are our eyes move to certain places depending on the way that we're thinking and what we're thinking. If we're remembering something, if we're right-handed, our eyes tend to go to the left, and if we're constructing something, they tend to go to the right. That's the opposite way around for most left-handed people, but there are people that don't fit that pattern, they're the opposite, but people tend to be the same consistently, even though they might differ from the norm or differ from other people. If we're visualising something, we tend to look up, so up, left, remember, up, right, construct. If we're thinking in sounds, like imagining the sound in our head, if we're remembering a sound, we tend to look over to the left, and if we're constructing a sound, we tend to look over to the right. We also tend to look down and to the right when we're connecting with our feelings, and we tend to look down and to the left, like this, when we're having kind of like talking to ourselves, that kind of thing, that sort of internal dialogue. So all of that is going on when someone is fully engaged in imagining something, and their eyes are flitting around all over the place. Now you can kind of test this if you want to. Just have a friend and say to them, ask them to do something that you know is going to cause them to have a visual memory. So you might say, what colour is your front door? And in order to answer that question, they have to kind of look up to see it. If they look up left, that's where they get their remembered images. If they look up right, that's where they get them. You might say, what side is the keyhole on, or what colour is your car? Then you might ask them to imagine something, like, what would a green hippopotamus look like? So you can see how they construct and how they remember things. Now, Darren Brown does very often a routine where he shows a demonstration of saying whether or not someone is telling the truth, whether or not they're lying or telling the truth, and it's using this exact same technique. Your eyes move to certain places when you remember something. When you're telling a lie, you are constructing something. So if he finds out which ways that person's eyes move when they're remembering something, and then he asks them a question and tells them to lie on one of them, on that one, their eyes will move to where they're constructing, not to where they're remembering, and you can kind of pick out which one's the lie. Now, of course, with this, there are exceptions to the rule. There are people that do funny things with their eyes, and a lot of people just stare straight forward when they visualise. So a little bit of a sidetrack there, but it's an interesting subject to me. I'm going to come back to that later. So that's rapid eye movements. Another one to look out for is not so much when you're hypnotising a person, but more when you're just talking to people about hypnosis. And let's say you're talking to a few people, they're all listening to you, and you're going to give a demonstration of hypnosis, or you decided you might try a rapid induction, and you've got to choose which person to do this on. Look for the person whose eyes are already glazed over and they're just hanging on your every word, because they are already halfway down into trance. So if you do a demonstration with them, it'll be incredibly effective. And then all the other people that perhaps wouldn't have responded quite so well, once they've seen you do that successfully, they'll respond to you much more favourably. Now, that kind of wraps up what you need to look out for when you're hypnotising somebody. Another thing we're going to talk about in this lesson, because it is related, is it's tests that you use to determine whether the person that you are hypnotising is faking it or whether they're genuine. The subconscious mind is incredibly literal. It's very similar to a child, probably about a 4 or 5 year old child. And if you say something to an adult, they will take it. Quite often people will know what you mean even though you're saying something a little bit indirect, but a child won't. A child will take you literally. To give you a really simple example, if you put your hand out in front of somebody and you said to an adult, what's directly in front of your face? They would say your hand. But if you said that to a child, or if you said it to someone who is hypnotised, they would very probably say nothing or air. And then if you said, but what's in front of that? Then they'd probably say your hand. Also, when a person is hypnotised, there's this duality going on. It's really quite strange. If there's a test, a very famous test, where you stand a person in one corner of the room who is hypnotised, and you stand in the other corner, and you put a chair in the centre of the room, and you tell them they cannot see the chair under any circumstances, and then you tell them to walk directly towards you in a straight line, and they are not to bump into anything. And then they'll walk to you. People who are faking it will walk into the chair because you've told them they won't see it. People who are not faking it will walk in a dead straight line to the chair, walk around the chair, and then a dead straight line to you. And then if you say to them, why did you walk around in the middle of the room? They'll tell you to avoid the chair. And then if you say, I told you you couldn't see the chair, they'll respond, what chair? And there's that weird duality going on. They kind of know, but they don't know. Similarly, in a stage hypnotic environment, you might say to, a really common routine is to say to somebody, everyone in the audience is naked. Is there anybody you like? Now they can see the audience naked, but they'll probably say, oh, the lady in the blue blouse is quite nice. So they can see the blouse, but they can't. So if you then say to them, I told you they were naked. What do you mean a blue blouse? They'll go, what blue blouse? So there's a weird duality that goes on when people are hypnotised, which a person faking hypnosis wouldn't be aware of that, and they would respond the way you might expect somebody to. So it's a little bit strange. So there's a couple of things you can do there if you want to sort of test whether or not someone is genuinely hypnotised. Usually people don't fake hypnosis, and obviously if you're doing hypnotherapy or anything like that, then you're not going to have people faking. It would be ridiculous. So that kind of wraps up today. That's a few ways that you can look out for signs that someone's going into trance. I wish you the very best of days, and I will see you tomorrow. Take care and bye-bye.